All right. Hello, everybody. My name is Leo Tsukiyo, and long story short is I live on the East Coast. Got to sleep before 1:30, which is when World started, and axed around. And most people told me that World Elite versus Lyon Gaming was the game to watch. It was the most eventful, most exciting, even though overall everything was dull. So what you see around me is going to be the pick ban for this game because I had quite a bit of contention with it, more so on the side of Lyon Gaming than anything else. But I do have some gripes with World Elite as well here. So we're going to go through the pick and ban, and I'm going to tell you exactly what I think as to why it was suboptimal, specifically from Lyon Gaming. And you could agree, disagree, but just wanted to open up this conversation because I think Lyon could have been capable of more. I think World Elite definitely undersold their own draft. So I have my trusty little notes open. Got ourselves the pick and ban. So we open up. We see already the bans are for World Elite. We have Rek'Sai, Alistar, Tristana eliminated. For Lyon Gaming, we have Jarvan, Sejuani, and Kalista eliminated. Naturally, you look at what's open: Xayah, Rakan, Cho'gath, Maokai, Janna, Lulu, Kog'Maw as an alternative AD carry. So World Elite take Xayah. They don't want to deal with Xayah Rakan more than likely. I actually am unfamiliar with the champion pools of Lyon Gaming completely, so I can't give context in that sense. I don't know if they're heavy Xayah Rakan players to facilitate that conversation. But World Elite don't want to deal with the Xayah Rakan duo situation. So what they do is they take the Xayah, which is great. You have an ultimate that goes untargetable. If anybody continues to pursue you, you can press your E and then get a snare. And ultimately, I don't think there's anything else that would have been great to blind pick here. And since they were under, like I said, the duress of having to deal with Xayah and Rakan, this makes a logical choice. You could see why World Elite made this decision. So as we move through the pick and ban, for Lyon Gaming's first phase, we see that they match this with a Braum and a Maokai. Now, no surprise, Maokai is pretty important right now in the meta. Point and click CC. He can literally zone off an entire lane, let alone like the river, the Baron area. His ultimate is crucial, correct? And he could be played jungle and top. So we have a little bit of diversity, a little flex pick here. Now Braum strikes me as odd because you have Lulu and Janna open. Now, before I discuss that, I'm going to jump a little bit into the future. For those of you who have seen the game, you'll know what I'm talking about. For those of you who haven't, small spoiler alert, nothing to do with the outcome. More to do with they take Courage of Colossus on Braum. Now, is this problematic? Braum can only proc Courage of the Colossus off of his passive stun and his ultimate. Neither of these are very reliable engage tools, which means he won't be in range of threat to adequately utilize that shield, is the point that I'm trying to get across here. Now, a friend of mine I was talking to, Inches Evans, is his IGN, he brought up the concept to me where Braum could have, in theory, went Stoneborn Pact and then built Ardent Sensor. Because later on we'll see that a Kog'Maw comes into play, and I'll get more into that as we move along. But the concept being is that as an ADC attacks, doesn't even matter if it's Kog'Maw, as an ADC attacks, they could proc the Braum passive, they can proc the Stoneborn Pact healing, they can also, if Braum was to go down the route of an Ardent, and admittedly I haven't played Braum in a bit, I don't know if that's an optimal build path, but I'm presenting the option here. So if he was to go that item, then every auto attack refreshes the Ardent, which would obviously be great for an ADC in that sense, correct? So we'll move on now. So the Maokai I have no contention with. Braum I have the contention with because Janna and Lulu are up. Now, why is this important? If anyone was to dive into a Lulu, Polymorph can be used offensively or defensively in the sense that it can be used either on an enemy or it could be used to speed up an ally. You also have Lulu's Shield. Naturally, she's going to build Ardent Sensor, so that's going to be great for her and virtually any other carry on the team. And Janna is open. The biggest disengage. The biggest way to reset a team fight. Juggling people up with Q. Let's put this aside for a moment. I'm going to go down the line again. So now we go into the retaliation from World Elite, who decide, hey, you know what? Cho'Gath is up. Who can also, coincidentally, be flexed between top and jungle, although I believe he's had a higher presence in top when it comes to pro play. So you kind of have an idea where he's going when he's picked. The Janna, great. Xayah and Janna will never be in danger. They should never be put in a position where Braum's passive can apply to them. There would have to be some really aggressive play for Braum to be close enough to double ranged, especially Xayah with her tornado. And I wager that they bring exhaust. Maybe they bring the heal barrier. I don't remember offhand. We'll get to that in a second. But if you have exhaust, then that's another way to slow down anybody who's in range to do damage. This lane, in theory, if ever chased with Xayah Tornado and Xayah E with her feathers, should never be chased down. Absolutely not. If played well, it should never be chased down. Now, if you get into the concept of like a Maokai teleport and a 5-man dive, that's a totally different story. Still, Xayah could kind of reset that, get the bearings together with the ultimate and whatnot. But there's more possibility there, right? So I'm going to give credit where credit is due. I'm saying it's a difficult task to gank this bottom lane at the end of the day. So let's move forward. Now, Lyon Gaming respond with Kog'Maw. Let's consider for a moment. Kog'Maw and Braum, it's pretty good. But you've already seen that the Xayah is there. From this, you could already extrapolate. The ADC can't engage. She's not a Sivir with a Sivir ultimate. Cho'Gath can't really engage until he gets maybe Righteous Glory, and then he's going to run at you anyway. Now, in an ideal world, sure, Braum could land a Q, potentially stun the Cho'Gath. Cho'Gath would probably already be in range to knock somebody up, potentially silence by this point. Whereas, if you have Lulu, you can polymorph, you can speed up your ally, one of the two, depending on the situation. You can shield your ally. You can let the Maokai dive onto the Cho'Gath, and then if anybody else comes across that territory, ult him as Lulu. Makes him bigger, allows him to tank more. He heals ridiculously in the mid to late game anyway, thanks to his passive and the amount of spells that would be going off. This seems more sound to me. In an instance where this composition runs at you, you have many ways to stop them there. But you know what? Just looking at this draft so far, my main contention is the Braum. Kog'Maw's okay. I think it's much better with the Lulu, as I've already voiced. But let's move forward, right? Oh, you know what? Hold on a second. I actually included the second ban phase in this. So we see that LeBlanc and Galio have been banned. Now, you might think this is random, a little weird for those who don't follow LPL, and I don't. I had to research this a little bit. Xayah, the mid laner for World Elite, his two most played champions in the summer regular season. LeBlanc followed by Galio. Now, LeBlanc is interesting because LeBlanc obviously can usually 1v1 most enemy laners. She also has the capacity to roam really efficiently. Now, take that off the table. One less threat potentially for a carry because, again, there's no polymorph here. There's a Braum. So the LeBlanc can dive from behind, potentially, try to get a combo off, then W back, things like that. And the Galio, obviously, besides the fact that it's the second most played for Xayah, has the defensive stat gain on its ultimate, or damage reduction, I guess it would be. So, in theory, the Galio could be mid, easy wave clear, ult the Xayah if she's ever in danger. So they remove that option from the table. This is great. Likewise, on the other side of the table, we know there's a Kog'Maw, so World Elite decide, you know what, let's get rid of a Karma. Braum may be selected, but Xayah, I guess, potentially plays Karma mid, if they were that concerned, and then Shen top is a great removal as well. These are taking away these defensive and forgiving abilities from protecting this Kog'Maw, which leaves him with less security than he would have. Now, as we move forward, things are going to get ridiculous. And this is what I mean by ridiculous. So, Lyon Gaming decided to go with Syndra. My contention with this pick is you've already established that you have Maokai and Kog'Maw. Orianna is open here. Orianna doesn't have many poor lane matchups. Some could argue as to whether or not she does well into things like Syndra and Corki. And admittedly, Xayah has played a lot of Corki. Well, a relative amount of Corki. He played a lot of Syndra in spring, but he's only had 3 games of it on the summer regular season, according to Gamepedia, which was the only place that had updated LPL stats, as far as I know. And he went 1-2 on that. It wasn't like it was a wildly successful pick. Now, perhaps they didn't want to take the Orianna and get bullied by the Syndra. Maybe they didn't want to deal with the reverse end of that matchup. So they just took the dominant pick to dissuade an Orianna and just deal with whatever else. Because Syndra has excellent wave clear, great burst potential after that. But I would argue that the Orianna has greater zone control. She could put the ball on the Maokai for easy ult assist. She could add resistances and a shield to the Kog'Maw. All of this versatility, while not really losing the lane to anyone. And having great wave clear after, I think, like Mana Book, maybe 2 backs, not sure. But it's relatively early. It's not like it's a late game wave clear monsters, she gets her wave clear relatively early. So even if she's not having a fun time in lane per se, she doesn't really lose it either. And thinking of the greater picture of the team comp of wanting to fight for objectives and things like that, so far we don't see engage off of the side of World Elite. So you don't really have to worry about getting engaged on heavily. But if the Cho'Gath does run at you, which is what you see right now, that's why I'm saying the Lulu would be better here. The Orianna could put her ball in a certain place, and then if the Cho'Gath tries to run, if there's any follow-up, can activate her ultimate to dissuade that. And it gives the entire team time to reset. Or put the ball on the Maokai, who can then go in and W onto the Cho'Gath. Either way, the possibilities here are endless. But I think that the Orianna is infinitely better in the mid lane here, and I'm not going to harp on this Lulu or Xayah over Braum thing anymore, because I think I've beaten it to death. So moving on to the next phase. World Elite responds with Gragas and Corki, and the important thing to note here is that both of these champions provide a certain amount of engage. Gragas obviously could body slam. The casters did note that this is the patch where the hitbox was reduced, or modeled to scale appropriately, I guess. And so it's a little less reliable, but the ulti still exists, and that's great. Disrupt. You have Xayah who could reset the fights, and then you have Gragas who could also disrupt the enemy team. This is great. Only problem is there's no real CC to hold a target in place. If you were to Gragas ultimate a target into your team, they would have to be bursted immediately, more or less, unless Xayah tornadoes them. But I mean, that's very particular. Corki, obviously with the package, can set up ganks. He's able to go in pretty deep. He doesn't really want to in this case, especially if you're looking at things like the Kog'Maw, the Maokai, the Braum. Braum can shield most of Corki's things. I'm pretty sure he blocks the Q, the ultimate, probably the E. Probably makes the Gatling gun stop at his E. I don't remember offhand, to be quite honest. But point is, now we have the full rounded out composition for World Elite. And it doesn't really have any hard engage, and even where there are elements of engage, there's no real follow-up engage. The worst comes to worst is, like I said, Gragas ultimate knocks somebody back, a little bit of burst from the Corki and the Xayah damage, DPS burst together, and then maybe Cho'Gath ults them, and then bam, you have a 5v4. That's an ideal scenario, right? But as we move on here, we can see the Gragas is more than likely going to be jungle. Cho'Gath is more than likely going to be top. Either way, they're both melee champions, which means in the top lane, you can draft something to hurt them. You can take advantage of their weak early game. But as we see here, they decide to go with the Lee Sin jungle. I don't have a qualm with Lee Sin jungle specifically, but Maokai is scaling tank versus Cho'Gath is scaling tank, and we could argue the different merits of how Maokai gets super tanky and almost unkillable, as does Cho'Gath, which the team with the Kog'Maw admittedly might be less afraid of, but this Kog'Maw doesn't have an enchanter support either. So we need to keep that in mind, that the normal damage scaling that we're used to in the current meta, in this patch, that could be supplemented, when you factor in the supplementation of a Lulu, of a Xayah, of even things like Nami, I guess, in solo queue, but the Ardent Sensor itself just boosts the damage so significantly. And we're not going to get to see that here, because even the Braum doesn't facilitate that. No Stoneborn Pact, remember, like I said. So, in an ideal world here, you could actually flex the Maokai into the jungle. He has a decent enough clear. His sustain is really high. And you'd be able to pick like a Gnar or a Jayce and bully the Cho'Gath, literally Khan style, when Longzhu played against SKT. So, it really begs the question here, for me at least, why didn't they opt to do that? Maokai as a jungler is also good for the sake of the fact that he has point-and-click CC. Like I mentioned before, his ultimate spans such a large range, and we know this. It's easy to zone. It's easy to target the ult at an enemy's escape route, force the flash. It's easy to come into an enemy that's pushed up, like the Corki would be, and then W them. And sure, he has Valkyrie, we could say that. We can make that argument, guaranteed. But point is it's point and click. It's less difficult to execute than getting the Lee Sin in there. And maybe we could argue, since Xayah can disrupt something, but Maokai becomes untargetable, Lee Sin is also highly mobile. He could get around the tornado pre-6, but it becomes very difficult after that, right? Xayah, like I said, is going to reset fights anyway. So for me, the ideal composition here is actually taking that Lulu, that enchanter, especially if the Kog'Maw was the plan the entire time, once the Xayah was revealed. You take the Lulu Maokai, And then Maokai all of a sudden gets additional health. He can get a shield on the way in. You could polymorph an enemy that's trying to get past the Maokai. Or you could speed up your AD carry so he could dance and kite around Maokai, who is this front line, stopping enemies from getting through the Maokai, but allowing Kog'Maw with his activated W to do more DPS, potentially get that shield himself for the Ardent Sensor, and then if there was an Orianna in the mid lane, all of a sudden, all these windows, they just pop up. Orianna shield onto the Maokai, easy repositioning for the ball, easy repositioning for the ultimate, and then if the ultimate drags a few people together, QW for more AoE damage. And then imagine there was a champion in the top lane that could abuse Cho'Gath's early laning phase and keep him down from CS and potentially XP range, but more so the gold itself. You have a Gnar who's ranged, a Jayce who's ranged and doesn't have to deal with involuntarily going into melee form. And all of a sudden, whether it's Gnar or Jayce, you have this other damage threat. You have something that can split push, teleport in. More so with Gnar, when he goes mega, he could jump in. When Maokai goes in to like pin down a target, Gnar can force his way into the enemy team, potentially get an ultimate off. Both of these champions offer the ult assist for Orianna, the ball delivery system, if you will. And again, Orianna would be another degree of safety for Kog'Maw. Lulu would be able to polymorph anyone who managed, by some miraculous method, to get past the Maokai, to get past the Gnar. You know what I'm saying? There were many options here for Lyon Gaming, and it doesn't feel like they've efficiently utilized the champion picks. Now, I have a few notes I'm going to quickly read through here to see what I did reach, what I didn't reach. Already discussed all the support nonsense that I have written down. Also in the mid lane, why Orianna would have been the superior pick, whether it be defending ADC and easy ball delivery system. Already covered the grounds that maybe they didn't want to deal with the Orianna into Syndra factor. Maybe they didn't want Orianna into Corki either. A lot of the champions that Xayah would default to after this happen to be a little more mobile. You got some Talia, some Corki. And after that, yeah, we spoke about abusing the Cho'Gath as well. So I actually don't have any other points other than imagine that dream composition of Gnar, Maokai, Orianna, Kog'Maw, Lulu. And it's not like it was impossible. Lulu was open at that time. Lulu was never even banned. It's just disheartening, and maybe that's why I keep harping back on these points, but that's really it. I just want to analyze this pick and ban. I really hope that everyone enjoyed it and could see the points that I'm making. I am very open to any contest. If you believe, for whatever reason, that my line of logic is not sound, then you can obviously argue that. If you agree with me in any way, you can let me know. If there's something that I missed that might facilitate the argument, you can obviously let me know that as well. I want to give a special shout out to Inches Evans, because without having this conversation and fleshing out the details with him, then I would not have actually considered how Cho'Gath would have been abused early, because it wasn't on my mind. I was too mind blown by the mid lane pick. And also Brahms, what the hell is it called? Brahms Keystone Mastery. That's what it is. I would have never noticed that either, to be honest with you, because when I was watching the game, I was just in utter disbelief by all the chaos. But either way, special shout outs to Inch. And I hope you guys enjoyed this little slideshow taking you through the pick and ban. I hope to do more of these whenever I find pick and bans to be a little too intolerable or really bizarre. But other than that, until next time, Leo Tsukiyo, signing out.